The dash of the high prairie settled on everything that summer. A fine red powder that clung to sweat and hope alike. Amos felt it in the back of his straw. A permanent grit had long since stopped trying to wash away. He was a man made of the land's hard silences. His shoulders broad from labor, and his heart vaulted off by loss. He was sitting on his porch mending a bridle when he saw them coming. A small clutch of men from town. Their logger carried on the hot steel air. It was a cruel sound, and it set his teeth on edge. At their center, be pushed along more the lead, was a woman. She was small, dressed in a faded grey prairie dress that hung on her thin frame. Her head bowed so all he could see was the black gleam of her hair pulled into a severe knot. He recognized Guthrie in the lead. A man whose good humor was always bowed at someone else's expense. Guthrie swaggered onto his land as if he owned it, shoving the woman forward. She stumbled but did not fall. Her grace a small silent rebellion. Afternoon, Amos. Guthrie boomed a wide mean grin split in his face. Town took up a collection of sorts. Figured you are getting lonely out here. We broke you some company. The other man snickered. Amos slowly set the bridle down, his movements deliberate, his eyes never leaving the woman. She kept her face hidden, a curtain of dignity e a sea of mockery. What is this, Guthrie? Amos' voice was low, rushed from Jesus. This, Guthrie said, gesturing grandly, is a gift from the Highload camp. They had a surplus. Said she don't speak a lick of English. Don't know a thing about rent work. Uzelis, they called her we figured a Uzelis woman was better than a woman at all for a man like you. She's all yours. No charge. The words were meant to sting, to remind Amos of his solitude, his otterness. The woman was not a person to them. She was the punchline to a joke he had asked to hear. He looked at her, truly looked that she was a vessel for their cruelty. And in that moment he felt a flicker of kinship. He knew what it was to be judged and discarded. He rose to his full height, a formidable shadow against the harsh sun. He didn't look at Guthrie. He looked at her, leave her, he said, the words as final as a stone dropping into a well. And get off my land. Guthrie's smile faltered for a second, surprised by the lack of argument, the lack of shame. He expected Amos to protest, to be flustered. Instead, he just sat there climbing the joke as his own. With a shug and another round of jeering laughter, the men turned and left, their boots kicking up clouds of red dust that slowly drifted back to earth. They were gone, and she remained. She sat perfectly still in the yard, a small grey statue in the immense sombrely arched landscape. The silence that fell was heavier than the heat. Amos was a man who understood the language of animals and weather, of soil and seasons. He did not know the first thing about what to do with a person, especially one delivered to him like a stray calf. He cleared his throat. You can come inside, he said, his voice avowed. He gestured toward the cabin door. She lifted her head for the first time, and he saw her face. It was not a face of defeat. Her features were fine, her eyes dark and deep and impossibly intelligent. They held fear, yes, but beneath it was a bedrock of resolve that startled him. She gave a slight formal bow, a gesture so out of place on the dusty frontier that it seemed to belong to another world entirely. Then she followed him. The inside of the cabin was sparse and clean. The home of a man who lived by routine, not comfort. There was a man with a stone art, a table, and 2 chairs. A small curtained off alcove held his bed. He pointed to a small door at the back. That room is empty. It's yours. He didn't know if she understood the words, but she seemed to grasp the meaning. She gave another small nod and disappeared inside, closing the door softly behind her. Amos sat alone in his main room, the silence now occupied by a presence he could feel through the wooden planks. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of profound certainty. The town had meant it as a cruelty, a way to mock the lonely rancher. They had saddled him with a burden a Uzelis mouth to feed. He looked at the closed door and for the first time in a long time felt something other than the wash of grief. Refelt aqui simmering anger and beneadet a strange and unfamiliar sense of responsibility. The first days were I study in silence. Her name was Lynn, though revolved to learn that for weeks. To him she was just the key a woman in the back room. She moved through his house like a ghost, leaving no trace but for the subtle signs of her existence. He would wake to find the earth swept clean, the ashes neatly disposed of He coming from the fields to find his one-shipped plate and cap washed and placed precisely where He left them. She ate little, and only after he was finished, taking whatever was left over as if she had no right to a full portion. He tried to tell her through gestures that she should eat with him at the table. He pointed to the second chair, then to the food, then to her she would only shake her head, her eyes lavered, and wait. He was a man of action, not words, and his inability to communicate gnabbed at him. He worked his land with a ferocity born of a bee, the sun beating down on his back. But now his solitude was different. He was a vary of her, a silent witness to his life. He would find himself glancing toward the cabin, wondering what she was doing. One afternoon, he saw her behind the house near the well. She was using a broken stick to scratch at the hard, unforgiving earth, turning over the soil with a patience that seemed monumental. He waited her for a long time. The next day, he left a spade and a way leaning against the back wall of the cabin. He said nothing. When he returned that evening, a small perfectly square patch of ground had been tilled, the soil broke and had. He found his main basket on the table, his work shirt slid out. The tears in the elbows were gone, replaced by stitches so small and they were nearly invisible. It was a language he was beginning to understand. It was the language of work, of care, of making something better than it had been before. That night, he cooked more than he needed, a thick stew with potatoes and salted beef. He set 2 plates on the table, 2 cups. He sat and waited. After a long moment, her door opened. She looked at the table, then at him. He simply nodded toward the other chair. Hesitantly, she sat. They ate in complete silence. The only sound is the scrap of spoons against pottery. It was not an easy silence, but it was a shared one. It was a beginning. The rhythm of their life settled into a key pattern dictated by the sun and the needs of the land. Amos rose before dawn, and she was always already awake, a pot of coffee simmering over the low flames of the earth. He never heard her eyes, but the evidence of her key industry was everywhere. The cabin, once just a shelter, was becoming a home. She had found a patch of wild flowers by the creek and placed a small bundle of them in a tin cup on the table. The splash of color was a shock against the drab wood, a small insistence of beauty in a wood of function. She had washed the single window until it gleamed, letting in the morning light. Her garden was her domain. She tended it with a devotion that baffled him. The soil was poor, the sun relentless, but she quashed life from its tiny green shoots began to push their way through the earth, a testament to her persistence. Amos found himself protecting the small plot, diverting water from the well to a barrel nearby so she would have to carry it so far. He did it without a word, and she accepted the gesture with a silent nod of her head. One sweltering afternoon, Guthrie and another man rode out from town. Amos saw them from the far pasture, and a cold knot formed in his stomach. He made his way back to the cabin, his long strides eating up the ground. By the time they arrived, he was waiting on the porch, his arms crossed over his chest. Lynn was inside, but he knew she was watching from the window. Well, Guthrie called out, his voice thick with liquor. Came to see how you're managing with your new property. Has she learned to do anything useful yet? His companion logged a coarse, ugly sound. Maybe you need some help breaking her in, Amos. Amos didn't move. He let their vile words hang in the air, spoiling the clean key of his land. He was not a man prone to violence, but a deep protective instinct flared inside him, hot and bright. He fought off her nail stitches, the flowers on the table, the determined set of her jaw as she worked the stubborn earth. Os L's. She had broke more life to this place in a few weeks than he had managed in years. He finally uncrossed his arms, and the simple movement was full of menace. You've aside your piece, he said, his voice flat and dangerous. Now get off my land before you have to be carried off it. Guthrie's bravado vittered under the cold fury in Amos' eyes. He was joking. After a moment of tense silence, Guthrie spat on the ground, pulled on his heels, and rode away, his friend trailing behind him. Amos stood there until there were nothing but small sacks on the horizon. He turned and saw her face in the window, her expression readable, but he knew with a certainty that settled deep in his bones that something had just shifted between them forever. That evening the air in the cabin was different, charged with the unspoken events of the afternoon. The confrontation with Guthrie had drawn a line in the sand, not just for the town, but for the two people living under this roof. He had defended her, he had defended their home. It was a simple act, but it felt monumental. After their silent dinner, he went outside to sit on the porch steps, watch as the sun bled across the sky, painting the clouds in hues of orange and purple. The heat of the day was finally breaking, and a cool breeze whispered through the tall grass. He heard the cabin door open and close softly behind him. She came to stand near the railing a few feet away, her hands clasped in front of her. For a long time, they just watched the twilight happen, sharing the vast space. He wanted to say something, to explore, to tell her that no one would speak to her that way again. But the words would to form he had spent so long in silence, he'd forgotten how to build bridges with language. He finally turned his head to look at her. Her face was calm in the fading light, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. He saw the strength in her that Guthrie and his kind would never understand. It was the strength of a fish but of a root, deep and tenacious. He cleared his throat. They won't be back, he said the words rough. She turned her head, her dark eyes meeting his. He expected a nod, the silent acknowledgement he was used to. Instead, her lips parted, and a sound emerged, soft and hesitant, shaped by a tongue unaccustomed to the language. Thank you. The two words were a gift. It was the first time she had spoken to him in English, the first time he had heard her voice directed at him. It was not the voice of a useless woman. It was the voice of a person with a name, a history, a will of her own. The sound hung in the air between them, more real than the solid porch railing, more powerful than the miles of empty land surrounding them. It was a beginning, a real one. What do you think is the most important foundation for a relationship? Is it shared words or shared actions? Let me know in the comments below. For Amos and Lynn, a single shared action and two small words were about to change everything. The summer deepened, and with it the key understanding between them. Her single thank you had unlocked something and slowly carefully a few more words began to pass between them. He learned her name was Lynn. He said it aloud once dashed to hear the sound of it in his cabin. Lynn. It felt right. She learned his name Amos and spoke it with a key reverence that made him feel seen for the first time in years. Their conversations were small and practical, built around the tasks of their shared life. More water, he would ask, gesturing to the garden. Yes, please, she would reply. The bread is ready, she would say, her voice still soft, and he would come inside, drawn by the warm, comforting cell. Her garden was thriving, an impossible patch of green in the parched landscape. She grew batch and squash and strange leaf vegetables he'd never seen before. Their meals became more varied, more flavorful. She was transforming his existence from one of mere survival to one of key abundance. He found himself looking for ways to repay her silent, constant care. He rode out to the far creek and found a flat, smooth stone perfect for grinding herbs. He left it on the kitchen counter without a word. The next day, he found a small pouch of fragrant dried leaves next to his plate, a tea that soothed the ache in his muscles. After a long day, he began to notice the small details of her presence. The way she would pause in her work to watch a hawk circle in the sky. The focused intensity in her eyes as she saved. The small, almost imperceptible smile that touched her lips when one of her plants produced a new leaf. He was no longer just sharing a space with a stranger. He was learning a person. He was discovering the landscape of her spirit just as she was learning the contours of his land. One evening he came in from the bar later the usual, bonvery and covered in dust. He expected to find his dinner wait on the table as always. Instead, he found her sitting in her chair, her hands still, her gaze fixed on the door. She had been waiting for him. The realization struck him with unexpected force. She was cooking for him as a duty. She was waiting to share the meal with him. It was a simple thing, but it spoke of partnership, of a shared life. You waited, he said, his voice softer than he intended. She simply nodded. It is better to eat together. A storm rolled in late one August night, a violent squall that threw rain against the cabin walls and lit up the sky with jagged flashes of lightning. The wind howled around the aves, a wild and lonely sound. Inside the small cabin felt like a fortress, a tiny bubble of warmth and light against the raging darkness. A fire crackled in the earth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Amos was sitting at the table, cleaning a piece of tack. The familiar motions of his hands a comfort in the storm. Lynn was in the other chair mending one of his shirts. Her needle moving with a steady hypnotic rhythm. The silence between them was no longer empty or absurd. It was full. It was a comfortable quiet, woven from shared days and mutual respect. He found his eyes drifting from his work to her. The firelight softened the tired lines around her eyes and illuminated the graceful curve of her neck. He batted the delicate, precise movements of her fingers, transforming a torn piece of fabric into something whole again. That was what she did. He realized she mended things. She had mended the silence in his home. She had mended the soil in his yard. And without even trying, she was mending the deep, ragged tears in his own solitary life. A powerful emotion washed over him. Something warm and expansive that settled deep in his chest. It was more than gratitude, more than responsibility. It was a profound entenderness. This woman, who had been brought to him as a cruel joke, had become the key center of his world. The thought was so clear, so undeniable that it stole his breath. He put down the piece of letter he was holding. The small sound made her look up, her dark eyes questioning in the firelight. He didn't have the words for what he was feeling. He was a man of the earth, of things he could hold and fix. This feeling was formless vagueness, and yet it assured him more than anything ever had. He slowly reached his hand across the small table, his callous, work-roughened fingers standing toward her. Hesitated for a moment, then gently, tentatively laid his hand over hers. Her skin was warm, her hand so small beneath his. She did not pull away. She simply stopped her saving, her stillness, a form of acceptance. A silent question had been asked, and a silent answer had been given. In the heart of the storm, a new and fragile peace had been born. The trip to town was a necessity. Supplies were running low, and Amos could no longer put it off. This time, however, the thought of going alone felt wrong. "I need to go to town," he announced one morning. For flour, salt, repaused, then added. "You should come." Lynn looked up from the dog she was kneading, a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. She had not left the ranch since the day she arrived. To her, the town was the source of her humiliation, the place where she had been bartered like an animal. But then she looked at Amos at the steady resolve in his gaze. He was asking her, not really. He was stating a new fact. "We go together." She simply nodded, wiping the flour from her hands. The walk into town was quiet. Amos was acutely aware of the satires they received. The people of the town, who had once pitied or mocked him for his solitude, now watched them with a different kind of judgment. Whispers followed them like bulls on a blanket. He felt Lynn walk a little closer to him, her presence a small, solid point in a sea of disapproval. He wanted to shield her from it, to build a wall around her with his own body. The Intered de General Store, the bell above the door jangling loudly announcing their arrival. The storekeeper stopped his work, his eyes widening legal. And then, from a corner of the room, a familiar voice cut through the silence. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Guthrie sneered, leaning against a barrel. Still enjoying your free property, Amos? The insult was loud, public meant to shame them both. Amos shouted, his hands clenching into fists. He took a step forward, ready to end this once and for all. But before he could speak, something shifted. Lynn stepped out from behind him. She stood tall, heart lifted, and faced Guthrie directly. Her voice, when she spoke, was not loud, but it was clear and sharp as glass, cutting through the thick silence of the store. His wife. The words stunned the room into absolute stillness. They stunned Guthrie into a slack javed stupor, but most of all, they stunned Amos. He stared at her at the fierce, unwavering loyalty in her eyes. She had not spoken in her defense. She had spoken in his. She had claimed him, claimed them in front of the very people who had tried to tear them apart. A slow warmth spread through his chest. Without taking his eyes off her, he reached down and his hand found hers, their fingers lacing together. He looked at Guthrie, his voice low and firm, filled with a pride he had not repossessed. That she is. The walk back from town was as quiet as